Welcome to the Jali podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Barrett. This podcast is for those who are interested in the conversation around diversity, inclusion, and equity. Each week, I'll be interviewing a guest who has something special to share or is actively part of building solutions in this space. Let's get started. Well, welcome. This week, I'm excited to introduce you to my guest, Rhodesia Ransom. She's an educator, planning commissioner. She's been a nonprofit director for Sow a Seed Foundation, and she has connected hundreds of local youth with leadership training and mentorship opportunities. Aside from that day job, she is our current city council member in Tracy, California. She's brought gang violence intervention programs into schools. She's helped families protect their homes from the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. She's also been an associate faculty member at the University of Phoenix's Graduate School of Business. She's got 15 years of private sector management experience. And certainly as a planning commissioner, she looked to attract new jobs while protecting the community's resources. She's been on the San Joaquin Civil Grand Jury, a member of the Anti-Bully Committee for the school district, a state-certified family mediator, and certainly a volunteer instructor for the Student Discovery Program. Her number of activities goes on and on and on. So I'm just ecstatic to have you here. I know you're currently running for county supervisor for San Joaquin County. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you now that we are in this era of focus on social injustice. So I just appreciate you being here, and I'm looking forward to kind of digging into a little bit about your own personal journey and how you even got here.
Well, thank you. I am really happy to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm listening to you. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's reading all the things you're telling everything. So yeah, those are things that I have done and things that I am involved in our community. Currently, the city council position takes up a lot of what I do in addition to my day job as the executive director of the organization. But I am here to, help other people on similar journeys and add whatever value I can to these fights for social justice and making sure that we are open to diversity and inclusion and really making sure that we are empowering our community when it comes to equity and really making sure that we're not just talking about equality, that we are talking about equity and having these conversations in our community and what the differences are. So thank you for having me. I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've known you for, I don't know, maybe several decades. I'm not sure, but I remember you working for a local financial institution way back when.
Yep.
And so when I think about your own personal journey, you were doing things back then. I think you grew up in San Francisco?
Yeah. So, yes, I grew up in San Francisco. I was actually born and raised in San Francisco, got my education there as well. My grandmother was a missionary, and that was like my introduction to service. And really, when you met me, it was nearly 20 years ago. Yes, I had the traditional career job, but I also did things in the community, service things, because it's in my DNA. When you have a grandmother that's a missionary, you are a public servant. That's what you do. It's what you know. It's what you eat, sleep, and breathe. And so you don't know that there's another world until you get around other people and you try to invite them in. So, growing up, we connected families to resources, and that was kind of just a way of life. And then moving forward throughout my life, I went to college, and then I got involved in a sorority, which is a national sorority that's focused on sisterhood, scholarship, and service. And so continue service through there and through different board memberships, board opportunities, serving on some youth focused foundations, some social justice focused foundations, and then co-founding Sow a Seed. Back in 2005, we became an official nonprofit where we would work in the schools with youth. The superintendent and their prevention services would call us in to mediate situations, to do some mentorship. And as we worked with the young people, there were a couple of things that just really stood out. One being the disparity in the graduation rates, a disparity in the suspension and expulsion rates, and then realizing that as we're mentoring these young people, that a lot of them weren't just experiencing behavior problems, but they actually had some trauma that needed to be dealt with. They had a lack of resources that people in the systems that they were moving throughout just did not recognize. And so as a nonprofit, we really moved to close some of those gaps by focusing on, what can we do to make sure that these young people who were traditionally Black and Brown students, Black and Hispanic students to be specific, they were not graduating at the same rate as their peers. They were being suspended and expelled at higher rates than their peers. And just looking at what the data was saying in regards to that demographic of students and the experience they were having was putting them specifically on the pipeline to prison. So, and if you look at the numbers and the similarities, you'll be, it's kind of shocking. And so we really work to provide mentorship for young people, provide trauma-informed programs to educate the educators about cultural differences, because when you're in a place like Tracy, which is, where we moved here 20 years ago, it was growing, and one of the schools was, practically brand new, and they had the highest number of suspensions, and really there was a lot of culture issues there.
Yeah.
You got teachers that they're not used to teaching kids that don't look like them. And maybe those kids come from a louder household or they do things differently. So we had to also build into our programming, into our curriculum, some restorative practice training, some climate training, some cultural training. And as much as we could include that, we tried to get that in as well. So that's
actually profound, because I think in a lot of ways, that's really a lot of what's missing in so much, because as I look at my own kids, I remember having conversations with teachers about Black History Month or other things that they were less familiar with, and their responses were absolutely offensive. And I'm not sure they quite understood how offensive, but to the extent that you're talking about restorative practices, things that, both for the student and the people teaching the student are so important. So what are some of the challenges that you have seen and some of the benefits that you've seen from the work that you're doing?
It's really interesting. You say, what are the challenges? The challenges are very much what you mentioned, is that there's a resistance. There's kind of, we've always done it this way. And then there's also this tendency to not want to be accountable for learning about other people's culture and how other people come into our world and into our space, and even dealing with kind of some of the administrators. They are in places where they can't force their staff, because teachers, as example, have bargaining rights. And so they can't just go and say, okay, well, today you're going to learn this new practice, because they have to agree to participate in it. So one of the things that we did to, teachers are going to hear this, so to infiltrate is through our programs, we really modeled it, and we let them see how successful it could be. And then you make them want to go, well, what did you do with that student? Or we'll find other students other teachers, because you'd have a student who would do great in 6 of 7 classes, but was totally failing with that one. Or it would be quite the opposite. You would have a student who was terrible in 6 classes, but then that one teacher who understood how to relate to them, how to accept their culture, how to redirect and, and honestly to work with them as opposed to do things that were punitive or completely ignore it. Those teachers had more success, and we kind of tried to build on the success stories and try to get other people to see, well, here's a tool you can use, right, to
Yeah,
make you more successful. And so
that's
those,
fabulous.
yeah, that's one way we did it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a program that could definitely look to expand in other areas. Are you focused mostly right now within Tracy or the county, or?
So we work in schools throughout the county, mostly Tracy and Stockton is where we're located. It is where the schools, we go wherever, well, in our county, whatever schools are requesting our services, just because we're a small grassroots organization. We only have 14 employees. We could get more employees, but honestly, we really want to do a good job. And it's all about making sure that the people that you are connecting with, the young people, one, they have a heart for them, but two, they have to have, significant training in different things. So, we started off more as a mentorship organization, but through the years in San Joaquin County, there's this thing called Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's ACEs. It's based on a Kaiser study. And it's kind of a scoring model. Like if so many things happen to you, then those are called ACEs. Like living in poverty is an ACE, experiencing abuse, witnessing violence, those things. Well, in some of the areas that we work in, a lot of those young people have really high ACE scores. And so we can't just mentor them. We have to actually help them heal their situations. And some of the situations include, what we were talking about, which is justice and racism. Experiencing racism or experiencing injustice is actually a traumatic experience that we have to not only help them understand what's happening, if we can get some acknowledgement for what's happening, but it's an experience that we have to try to help heal at the same time. So, that's why it's impossible to just be everywhere, because you just need to do what you can do as well as you can.
Yeah, it's definitely a marathon and not a sprint. There's a lot of work to be done for sure, which is why I really wanted to have this conversation with more people, because I think when we start talking about students and the experiences they go through in school, then they end up getting their driver's license. They go out into the world and they believe that they have an opportunity, especially our Black and brown, underrepresented minorities. They believe they can, in fact, conquer the world. And there are a lot of systems in place that sometimes make that a limitation, which is so sad, because I think everybody, if you're a parent, you want to see your kids thrive. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that you're involved in with the city council? I mean, we've had a lot of conversations over the last few months about social injustice and racism, and the movement. There have been a lot of protests, both from Black and brown, but also from white and other ethnicities around the city, the country, the world,
Right.
which is, fabulous to have, allies who are actually understanding the depth of the challenges that have been going on. And I know you're doing a lot of work with the police and other agencies. Can you talk a little bit about how it's impacting your community and some of the solutions that you see?
Absolutely. Yes, there's so much happening since the George Floyd killing. I really feel like it's given people an opportunity to breathe and a freedom to really just say, look, this is what we've been dealing with for a long time when it comes to racism and injustice. And it's not that we've never seen it before. It's not that we've never seen a film. We've seen films before, but you've never seen one quite like that. You never seen one that just kind of hits you in a place where you're just saying, you know what, I cannot be silent about things. I cannot ignore certain things. I cannot allow people to make comments, and we just can't leave people in their ignorance anymore. And what I appreciate about this moment in time is it's not just Black people representing, hey, we want justice. It's not just brown people, but it's everyone. And it's very reminiscent of kind of the civil rights movement. When you look at pictures of Martin Luther King Jr. and, that movement, it was not just Black people in that fight for civil rights. It really takes people to come together to say, we're done. Enough is enough. And I really think that this is a moment in time that I feel like every generation has a moment in time. I don't even feel like this moment belongs to my generation. I feel like this moment belongs to my children's generation, as they have been, they've been at the forefront of different protests. And when you look at a community such as Tracy, where things are relatively peaceful, but we know that there are stories here. There are stories. We live here. We've heard some of the stories. We've seen, there was a play once called Being Black in Tracy, and it was very educational. And we know that there was the National Socialist White People's Party that was here in Tracy at one point. And we know that people have had some experiences. And so this moment in time, once this happened and 600 people show up at a protest, there were at least 5 protests that I know of that I participated in to go and just, my kids went, and just to see people talk about their different experiences, and it's not okay. So we need to, one, give them an opportunity and a platform to express what they've been through, but then as people of governance who are charged with, setting the rules, making the policy, and honestly, quality of life. This is a big quality of life thing when you have young people saying, this happened to me in school in the city that you are a leader in, or,
right.
We were at one and they said, well, who's in charge of the police? And I said, well, actually, I'm in charge of the police. So what's your concern? What's your problem?
Yeah.
And I think, we are very fortunate that our police department has done very well as far as, going out and engaging the community. But that didn't mean that to some other folks, they were saying, well, yes, that's your experience, but don't discount my experience. And we cannot do that. Right. So one of the things that has come out of this, in addition to us really trying to give not just young people, but anyone a platform to, express what they were feeling and what their needs are. My question is always like, what is your demands, right? If you're going to protest, you're going to need to what are your demands? I need to know what they are. and
right.
At the end of the day,
because we need to hold you accountable, right?
So, tell me what you are holding accountable to. What are you asking for me? And what I found is really people just want to know that they can trust, they can feel safe. They can feel safe when their kids go out. The young people want to feel like they can be treated equal. And so after a few protests, 500, 300, I think the smallest one was like 100 people at a candlelight vigil. And really what we had to do is go back, and myself and other council members, myself and one council member, Areola, and I, we wrote a policy proposal that was just recently adopted called the Equity and Empowerment Initiative. And the purpose of that was to do an assessment of our community. One, we need to acknowledge that everyone's experience in our community is not the same. Acknowledge some past things that have happened, and then make a commitment, a value statement that says, we value equity and diversity here in our community. Our staff did an awesome job. We said, you need to come back with a value statement, a resolution. We gave them the key points, and they actually came back with a very comprehensive resolution for Black Lives Matter, which a year ago, you could never get anyone to say that in the city council chambers, let alone get 5 people to vote yes on adopting that policy. And it was important, especially after listening to a lot of the Hispanic community here, to include them in this initiative. So we put that in there. And then myself and Councilman Areola, we wrote the empowerment initiative to look at our budget and how we're spending money and how we can actually make sure that, when our police are out there doing work, they've already told us, hey, it's not my job to solve homelessness. I am not a social worker. Don't make me go and arrest homeless people and violate their rights, right? So,
Right.
so we looked at this initiative as a way to not just make a value statement, but to make sure that when it comes to race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, we have women, working in our city, and they need to be able to know that, hey, they have the same opportunities as men, and Black people need to know they have the same opportunities as white people. So we need to make sure that our departments, not just the city departments, but people we give money to through MOUs and contracts and vendors, if you're going to work with our city, you're going to value equity and diversity because it's required before we're going to work with you. So, but basically my point is that we don't want to just talk about, equity and empowerment. We want to make sure that when it comes to the policies in our community, the systems, that people can know that we mean business when we say that we're a place that values equity, and that we value justice, and that you can be safe with us. Our police department, they actually agreed. Even before we even had the conversation, our police chief was on top of it. He'd already made some moves to take out, one of the chokeholds. I can't pronounce that chokehold, but he'd already making a move to take it out. We talked about, they're going to increase their training to make sure that there is a professional courage. There's already a duty to intercede for a police department, but we want to give them the support in the proper training and knowing that this is how you intervene with your coworker, and they should feel safe doing that with one another. So there's training that they're going to go through. There's actually a history of policing that, new recruits are going to learn about, like the history of policing and where it started and where it should go, at least in our city. So that's that's how
that's a lot of work. That's great.
That is a lot
that's
of work
fabulous.
in a short amount of time. and I'll be honest with you, I'm probably making it sound really easy, but believe it or not, there are people who are opposed and they just don't see that you can value justice, you can be anti-racist, and you can still support and work with your police department. For some reason, and I think it's very divisive, people want to pretend, or they articulate that the two are, don't go together. They're not mutually exclusive concepts. So
Right, exactly. Well, and I think it's interesting because specifically, there has been a lot of effort to try to bring the community into alignment with the police over several years. I mean, this has been an area where the police want to hear and connect with the community. Mm-hmm. So I think I want to say I think in the city there's a community action committee or something like that.
The police department, the chief has the chief's committee. It's called the CAB. But yes, you're absolutely right. And so it was started with a couple of chiefs ago, but it's really a great opportunity for them to bring people in from the community and share, this is how our department's keeping you safe. These are some activities that we're doing so that when neighbors and young people interact with the police, they're not afraid. They're basically building rapport. And so that committee was started several years ago. That's one effort. There's also a leadership program that includes, public safety and teaching people how those types of things work. But, sometimes those things look like, they look all nice and shiny and pretty, but then people still don't feel in the community that what they're seeing is what they're getting. And that's the thing that we want to get to. A lot of the stories we hear start in school, and they kind of work their way into other little areas in the community.
Let's pause for a moment. We'll be right back. So in terms of diversity and inclusion from a city perspective for city employees, do you all have to make changes? Are you doing things differently in terms of how the city manager, in terms of how they employ and look for and, kind of expand their reach?
So it's really funny because we just passed this last Tuesday. And so now there's a couple of cities who've done this. Seattle is being one of them. And so now we're going to be employing this assessment tool to try and figure out like how things look. And it's not about just counting numbers. It's not about just saying, well, now we have enough Black faces or now we have enough, brown faces. But it's really about making sure that people are not being passed over, that implicit biases and people's, things that they don't even know that they carry with them, hey, I think this is a man's job. We need to make sure that our biases for our team and our hiring committees are checked at the door and that everyone has equal footing and equal opportunity. So that assessment is going to kind of tell us where we need to go. But that's the next step, is investing in that assessment and being able to figure out where we need to go to make sure that we are accountable. And then there's going to be some reporting and, outcomes that are part of that as well.
And that's great, because I think even a lot of corporations, businesses, some of the merchants that are around, and I'm not just talking locally, but nationally and even abroad, I think the movement to really focus on inclusion and diversity, I have actually seen now we talk more about inclusion, but you can't actually talk about inclusion without talking about diversity, because you have to know that you are open for business for everyone who wants to experience it. So that's great to hear that we're doing such positive things in the community. Are there things that, from a business perspective, in this county location that maybe they can add to what they're doing as they're focusing on diversity and inclusion? Are there things that you think other businesses should focus on?
I don't know that I've thought that far down. For me, it's like a non-negotiable that people need to just acknowledge what's happening in the world and do better. I think one of the biggest issues is that people are super uncomfortable, and they're uncomfortable having these conversations about even racism in their own family, right? And then you have people, there's some things that people do, and they'll come to me, "Oh, Miss Ransom, I can't believe they did that to you. That was racist." Well, that's not how you call it out. You don't whisper to me. So it's one
right.
We have some other layers we have to work on first.
Well, and that's a great point, because I think one of the things that with allies,
right.
That is the one thing that allies can actually do, is call things out like that. And I think sometimes they just are silent.
Right. And that's what's happened. So some of the things that we experience, me as a Black woman, maneuvering through a place like Tracy and being in leadership, and some people thinking people that look like me shouldn't be there, if you say something about it, then it's like, oh, you're playing the race card. So, that's really just a way of saying, we don't want to hear what you're saying, and we don't want to acknowledge the role that we have in this thing that you're talking about. And so it's so important that our allies are in tune to those situations and helpful in calling it out, because it's one of those things that, we can't just solve this on our own. And I don't care how much education you have, how much willpower you have. It's just not something. You cannot go unwrite decades, hundreds of years, centuries, I should say, worth of codes and policies that even the people that are working with today didn't even realize they were perpetuating those same policies and codes. They didn't write it, so they're not accountable to it. But we need to teach them so that they can help undo some of those systems. So when it comes to private business, I think it's really a personal choice, and it's a personal accountability and responsibility that I will be happy. I've been proud of a lot of people that have reached out to me and said, you know what, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. you know what, there's been some boards that have contacted me and says, can you meet with us? We want to learn how to diversify our board. So I think that's a step in the right direction, is looking at your board and seeing, what do you look like the people you serve? Do you have the experiences that speak to the need, to solving the needs of your community, right, that you're trying to serve? So we've seen some of that. I've had some people call and say, what book should I read? So there was a bookstore here locally.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that,
Uh-huh.
but there was a bookstore locally that was, they're like, hey, we're struggling right now. And I said, look, a lot of you have reached out to me about what book to read. Why don't we start a book club to read these books and support this bookstore? So we all bought this book. I thought I'd start real soft on them. We started with Just Mercy. so we
Yeah.
bought a book from the bookstore because people are genuinely going, you know what? I'm sorry that I'm late, but at least I'm here now and I want to do better. And
Yeah.
that's what I think is going to take.
Yeah. And I think that's great. If that's where you start, that's where you start. But at least you're starting. I think that's the biggest point.
Yes.
I think I certainly have talked to a lot of people that are just surprised at the depth of the challenges. So education is always a great equalizer. So to the extent that we can incorporate business into that social impact, I am all for that. So, can you talk a little bit about some of the goals that you all have for Sow a Seed, and how that may proliferate in diversity and inclusion? Are there connections to other positions and jobs? And I'm excited about young people and what they have to offer.
Yes. So one of the things I will say, that as an organization, we've always been focusing on mentoring, and mental health and social justice was part of that. But we decided that we need to be more explicit about that. Because we work with young people, traditionally the young people that come through our organization are young people who've had out-of-home placement, meaning they've been like in foster care, or maybe they had to live with another relative while their parents went through something, or they've been in touch with the juvenile justice system. So we just said, we got to be more direct and intentional about what it means to be an organization that's committed to social justice. And part of that is educating the community, educating our young people that work in our program. So we have we have a Young Leaders in Action program, which is really more it's more fun, like a kind of a youth leadership program. But now we're going to pay some of those young people to be youth organizers and to really go out and help educate other young people about how to be part of a positive movement that really takes back, it really is like taking back your self-esteem, taking back your place in the community, because things like, racism and things that happen to you, they really beat down your self-esteem and your self-worth, and kind of, really push you away from the success you could have as an individual. So we haven't figured out like everything we're going to do, but we definitely have said, what can we do to be more intentional about that social action piece, social justice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. Especially, as we think about, all the things related to public service, voting, the ability to help people get out and do what they need to do. That the self-esteem is something we sometimes forget about, what type of impact that has on whether I get up and go outside or, do anything today. So
Yeah.
it's important as we mirror what we want to see in the community.
Yeah, and it's also important to give our young people an opportunity to experience success. So one of the things that we did is myself, some of the sorority sisters that I talked about here in Tracy, we have the Tracy area alumni chapter. We put together a town hall, and we let the young people really, when I say we asked them, what are your demands? What do you want? And what came out of that conversation, which included the police chief, the sheriff, someone from the school board, myself from the city, they wanted to work with us. And so our police chief and the school board said, you know what, we're going to start a youth advisory commission. where you all will tell us what we need to do better in social justice. And so that's in the work. So letting those young people see that they can, get that seat at the table and have some input into decision making. And some of the demands that they had were actually put into that equity and empowerment initiative. They were the ones who said, do the police even understand the history of policing? So we took it to the police chief, and he goes, well, our department doesn't do that, but some other departments do that. And I think that's very important. So that was having the young people, express their demands and giving them some wins and letting them see that their voices do matter.
That's fabulous. I am so excited about all the work that is being done in the community. I hope it is just a needle in the haystack of, one location around the country and around the world. So I just really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about all of the things that are going on and the social impact that we're making on the community. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you for the work that you have done already. And we are looking forward to hearing more from you, Rhodesia Ransom. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. And I thank you for allowing me the space to uplift, our community and our young people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Congratulations and good luck.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. Thanks for joining me on the Jali podcast. Please subscribe so you won't miss an episode. See you next week.